Cool. Sterling, welcome, man. Glad you got some time to hang out with us and chat. Appreciate having you here.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. I'd love to be here.
Nice. Is this your first Network State conference?
Second, actually.
Second.
Went to the first one in Amsterdam as well last year.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. What's your impression so far on this one? What's your takeaway?
Actually, I think this one has been a lot better. I feel like there's been a bit of a higher value add in terms of the talks, primarily because those firesides that Balaji did, I feel like had a lot of value. I really liked the talk with Naval particularly. It was a really, really nice one.
Awesome. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff happening here, a lot of energy. We kind of talk about how do we appeal and scale to the greater human population, maybe outside of the crypto space, the tokenized space. Can you give me an idea of some of the problems you're seeing and things you're working on and things you're engaged in the solutions? What's really getting built right now? What are you working on that's really happening that's going to solve human problems?
Yeah, one of the things that's really concerned me through, not even just recently within crypto, but primarily throughout my life, is this idea that, especially in the US, that everything that we do should be public and transparent, right? In some ways, this idea of privacy has gotten associated with criminality. Like, if you want to be private or anonymous, you're a criminal, right? The whole idea, if you're not doing anything wrong, you should have nothing to hide, right? You should be able to be public. So one of my whole things has been promoting the idea of leveraging strong encryption, leveraging anonymity and privacy tech, not only for people like us who may be involved in crypto, but also for people, just average everyday people. But so a big part of this isn't just the tech, it's also the education. How can we educate more people to get them involved in not only crypto, but in just their everyday operational security online, being more private, and understanding the importance and the value of that? Because I think a lot of people don't realize that the government, especially in the US, has become a massive surveillance state where everything that you do online can potentially be surveilled. So we can get more into that, but so right now I'm working with Logos. Logos is an organization that is particularly focused on developing cypherpunk and crypto anarchist ideas into the technology. Where if you use the technology, you can have some guarantee that you're going to remain private and you're going to remain anonymous, just as a default feature of a lot of the tech. And this is, and just to give it one example, I won't get too shilly or get too deeply involved in this, but Waku is an infrastructure project that is part of the Logos technology stack, and it is it's a communication protocol. So really, it's for developers to build applications on top of. And what it does is it guarantees that human-to-human communication is anonymously built into that, so we can maintain our privacy. Probably heard of these horror stories, like people who are communicating online using Telegram, etc. If those chats are not encrypted, then anything that you say on those platforms can potentially be viewed by anybody who gets a hold of those. So that's one of the things that I've been involved in, is really thinking about how we can maintain privacy and anonymity in a society that's largely becoming more dystopic in a lot of ways, where governments are just surveilling and looking at everything. And we saw this, we probably got a rude awakening most recently in the US whenever Edward Snowden revealed what was going on with PRISM, this idea that the CIA and the FBI and a lot of these government agencies are actually collecting metadata and data on a vast, unprecedented scale in the United States. So that was a terrifying wake-up call for me. So it's not just about crypto. It's not even just about the network state. It's about saying, hey, you probably do have something. All of us have something to hide, right? If we're out there and we're online, right, there's probably private financial information that we want to keep to ourselves. We don't want that just to be revealed to everybody in the world. We want to, this is the whole cypherpunk idea. We want to be able to selectively reveal parts of ourselves to the world at our own. So and that's what that means. That's the idea behind privacy. Selective revealing of our personal selves, our financial lives, our individual lives. And I think that's of tremendous value to every single person, no matter what you do, no matter what walk of life you're from, no matter what kind of situation you're in. Privacy is not, there's this kind of funny thing going around where people are talking about privacy being normal, and that's 100% true. But as Amir Taki said, privacy is also exceptional. It's something that should be part of everything that we do, and we should try to keep it in mind whenever we go online, whenever we try to maintain our personal effects. It's just that important, that vital, and that critical.
And it's interesting having to work through the psychology and the social psychology of privacy, right? Because privacy wasn't an issue until data existed.
Yeah, I mean, so I think people kind of just took it at face value that they were going to be private while doing certain things simply because no one was around to, they just knew they were private,
And you
right?
could physically draw curtains.
Yeah, it's actually sad. This is a good point. Okay. It's actually sad that we're having to point out to people, like being in crypto, we're having to point out to people that yes, there are areas in your life where you want to be private. I remember a guy that I'm friends with who he works with an organization called Railgun. His name's Kieran. He got up and was doing a talk. He said, "You go to the bathroom during the day? Are you private during those times?" Yes, you're private. Right. That's a private activity that you don't want to just show or reveal to everybody. So that's just one obvious example of how we're trying to maintain that privacy or that anonymity in our personal life. So having to re-explain that to people almost feels like we've gone backwards in time in some ways. But it also points to the fact that the governments want us to be completely public in all of our affairs. And in some way, the psychology is getting warped where they're like, okay, this is how it should be, and your government especially should be able to know everything about you, which is completely backwards and antithetical to everything that has to do with living in a free and peaceful and open society, right? The last thing we want to be is surveilled by our governments to the extent, and this is another thing I'm thinking of, one of the horrible outcomes of everything being open and transparent to governments is when people feel like they're being watched, it creates chilling effects. So this idea of a chilling effect is when, a good example of this is Ross Ulbricht. By the way, he should be freed like immediately yesterday. Ross Ulbricht was the alleged Dread Pirate Roberts on the Silk Road. For creating that website, he got 2 life sentences plus 40 years in prison, right, for creating a website. By the way, for anybody who doesn't know who's watching, the Silk Road was the first so-called darknet marketplace, right, where people mainly did large transactions of cannabis, but a number of other things were being sold as well. But the point is that Ross, because everything he tried to be as private as possible, but there was some element where he had poor OPSEC. Primarily when he was younger, his email got tied to a Gmail email. And the feds were able to catch him as a result of that. So one of the stories here is, like, we do have to realize that everything that we do online is public until such a point where we try to take our privacy into our own hands, and then we leverage whatever tools that we see fit that we can use online to allow us to remain as private as possible. Our friends at DarkFi, who I just mentioned, Amir Taki, they talk about this idea of creating a dark forest infrastructure. So the dark forest is this idea that we create an environment that is totally anonymous, especially for developers to work and to build their tools to fight back against the establishment while remaining as anonymous as possible. Because, bringing it around full circle, the chilling effect, like what happened to Ross, has stopped and I know them. I won't mention any names, but I know developers who've stopped doing their work or have become terrified, and they've got off of social media because they're afraid that governments are going to go after them. So this is largely a huge part of this problem is because of government surveillance. And it's also because of the fear of what happens after governments catch people because of all the transparency online. So it's a real shame that's how it's happened. But this is why privacy and anonymity are so vital for pushing us forward.
And there's an interesting misnomer about anonymity in crypto as well, right? This idea that crypto is automatically anonymous, right? I happen to know somebody who was the lead investigator and followed one of the first crypto thefts and worked all the way through it, and they found who stole the crypto because it's not entirely anonymous. Like these are ledgers, these are immutable ledgers, right? So even that idea that crypto automatically by itself is anonymous is not exactly accurate, right?
Yeah, that's a completely valid point. I think a lot of us in the early days of crypto, we automatically believed, just because we repeated it so often, that Bitcoin was a private technology, was anonymous. But that's only partially true. Bitcoin's what we would call pseudonymous, right? Which means that yes, your name and your personal credentials are not attached to those transactions, but the moment that you go to an exchange like Coinbase, you have to what they call KYC, know your customer, which means you give them your ID, all your personal information, and then at that point, they can actually trace your Bitcoin using a tool like Chainalysis is one company. They leverage what's called blockchain analytics to trace back those transactions for as many quote unquote hops as they want to. So yes, it's a massive misnomer that crypto by default is private. And actually very few cryptocurrencies, especially the mainstream ones like Bitcoin and Ethereum, are 100. It's a misnomer that they're private or anonymous. They're pseudonymous, and they could become more private if you use something like a mixer, or you have a bit of technical acumen where you know how to kind of navigate those rules, but most people can't. So yeah, it's a huge problem. I would say one of the very few cryptocurrencies that's actually anonymous, that has high levels of anonymity, would be Monero, maybe Zcash. Zcash guy was actually here, Zuko Wilcox. So but my personal favorite is Monero, which is about to start using, I won't get into the technical, something called full chain membership proofs, which adds to the layer of anonymity involved in that protocol. But you're 100% right. And this also plays into this discussion we have been talking. If you're leveraging Bitcoin or these transparent cryptocurrencies, and you may be doing something that you think is bad or doesn't fall in line with the system, even if it's not that bad, may create that chilling effect where it curbs your behavior and you don't act as a rational economic actor on the market. And that's a horrible thing to have happen, because we want to all be as free as possible, and we can't be as free if we feel like we're being watched or surveilled and bad things could happen to us. And that just goes, I think that's going to be one of the key takeaways that we talk about. So if you're not free and if you're being surveilled, then you're not going to be able to function as a fully competent, fully functioning, rational actor on a market.
Yeah, and realistically, my only remaining anonymous currency is cash. There's not much of that left anymore, is there?
Yeah, that absolutely. I mean, we're very much a digital economy,
Right.
and most. I mean, most dollars are just digital numbers in a bank account. They're not actually physical units.
So let's bring this back to like I said, I'm the champion of the normies. Bring it back to scalability on a human social scale, right? How do we make it accessible for people to enter the exit, let's say?
Well, I really have to give props to Balaji and what he's doing with the network state. Like, I got into the network school, which is his school for anyone who's interested in these alternative societies, or what we would call parallel societies, parallel economies. And one of the things that he's done is say, listen, this isn't just for people who are crypto nerds or tech geeks. It's for anyone who doesn't fit in or mesh with the status quo, anybody who has a creative spirit and they're wanting to produce something new. Like I met a guy earlier who said he's really interested in developing documentaries, and he had no experience at all with crypto. He'd just been riding around in Australia filming a documentary for motorcycles, and he got into the network school. So I think creating more of these network states that focus on completely different topics than all of us who are in crypto or who are tech geeks are typically interested in is going to help really open this up for the average person. And already Balaji did a fantastic job by saying that we want this to be accessible. We don't want this to be for a bunch of billionaires who are hobnobbing on an island. This should be for the average person who's interested in following their dreams, their passions, and their pursuits without needing to, have a multi-million-dollar crypto bags to do it. And I think that's a beautiful start. And that's the thing. Network states they're for people who want to create systems outside of the current system. So anyone who just dislikes or disagrees with the status quo, this is already going to fit nicely within their realm of thinking. I know a ton of creative people who are not interested into crypto, but who may be interested in varying pursuits that don't fall in line with the common trends of thinking, say in the United States. So they could easily start their own network state, or they could opt into a pre-existing one. Because I think what's going to happen is we're going to see a myriad of different network states, or what we would call self-sovereign virtual territories, emerge that are based on this one commandment idea that Balaji had. Basically mean if you share a set of values, you're going to come together online with people who share those values, and then you can beam those values down to the land and start an actual physical community. So that by default, de facto means that you don't have to be a tech nerd to be involved in this ecosystem. That's what I love about it. The network state is the crossroads to a variety of different cultures, and that's a beautiful thing. Because previously, I started out, like I said, as an activist, but when I got into crypto, I kind of got tunnel vision and just kind of focused on all the memes and the tropes and the ideology that really is involved in those communities. So I was like, just super tunnel vision, nerd speak, talking about Pepe and Doge and Wind Moon and Lambo. You get you can get really involved in that and miss the forest for the trees, right? But the network state idea, I think, has opened up the fold for a lot of different kinds of people with a lot of different kinds of ideas to come in and be involved. And I think that really gets the rest of the world interested, not only in crypto, but into these ideas in general. I think it's a beautiful thing.
Because we're working towards human solutions here. If we're wanting to create solutions for a better world, then we have to think about the solutions that humans need, right? And that covers a huge amount of bases. And what we see happening right now is potentially regen, crypto, decentralization, intentional communities, governance.
Absolutely.
Different audiences starting to play into the same place. And how do we contribute to education in this? You mentioned you got a book you're working on.
Yeah.
How do we get this out into the public so people see that there are pathways here?
Yeah. So something funny. I think a lot of people, they're super enmeshed in the system. Like one of the biggest problems right now in the U.S., politicians, their modus operandi, their MO is to create an environment of divide and conquer. They want to pit people against one another. Right. And this has happened most emphatically with anytime that Trump is running for office, right? When he previously ran and was elected, and now he's a perfect rhetorician in the sense that he gets people really riled up and interested into joining into his political camp. But the reality is, in the U.S., left and right, there's no difference, right? It's one wing of the same bird, and so I think first trying to educate people, it's like putting information out there, continuing to spread the word on social media, and teaching people that governments aren't good for them, right? I'm pretty radical in the sense that I'm personally for the abolition of the nation state as it stands, and government as it stands. And I think the network state idea is just part and parcel of that. But in order to get people to really embrace these ideas, I think there has to be an element of not only understanding about how things actually work, but also a deep passion about living as freely as possible. And you can't live as freely as possible when you have some jackbooted thug looming over you trying to expropriate your wealth through taxation every step of the way. So coming to terms with this fact that most of us are brought up as essentially kind of a tax serf in society, and it's this idea that allows us to finally step outside of that. But really the first thing is we have to help people try to wake up to this dire, awful situation that we're in, where everyone feels like they have to politic, they have to play the political game. But I think the network state idea finally allows us to abandon politics altogether, because it allows people to finally opt in to systems that share their values. Why do you need to politic and debate with people and choose between the lesser of two evils, as they say, when you can actually just exit those systems and join in a system that meshes with your values? So this is all, it's kind of a ladder of education, right? You have to first see the forest for the trees. You have to see that the system is broken. That partly requires a person to also have some introspection and some internal work that they have to do. But then it's just easy, that information is pretty easy to get out there on the internet if you know where to look, right? You get that, and then you can finally learn, okay, so there are some possibilities. It's not all, a lot of people also, they have the mindset that all hope is lost, and they're highly pessimistic and nothing's going to change. But I think we can see very clearly with this idea of moral innovation, with the emergence of network states, that we can create change. And really what it's all about is changing the incentive structures in society that we live by. When the incentives are skewed or warped, in terms of a good example is the nation state, where those guys, all they have to do is just try to hoard their power because there's no competition. That's the situation that they're going to be involved in. But luckily, now we're in a predicament. We're actually going to offer competing governance services, and we're going to force or compel, at least with soft force, the nation state to compete with emergent network states. And that's going to help continue the cycle of helping people wake up to realize that not all hope is lost.
Yeah, and those change agents are showing up.
Absolutely.
Amsterdam and here, you've got a lot of people that are passionate about doing something. A lot of them are coming up with ideas. They want to build things. What message do you have to those out there that are motivated, driven, they're passionate, they want to do something, maybe they don't know what they want to do, or they have an idea to start with, or they're already building, or they have been building, nothing new going on here. People are trying to build new solutions. This has happened a long time. What message do you have to people out there that are trying to participate and push forward here?
Yeah, I really like what Naval had to say on that. I mentioned I really enjoyed the panels. I agree with this idea of become so impassioned by something, by an idea, by a technology, that you become obsessed with that idea and you chase it as far as possible to try to understand it, because then you unlock your own potential in terms of solving a problem that somebody else hasn't solved before. Get this, with me, it was all about when I first woke up, it was because I took a pill of MDMA and it snapped me out of this consensus trance, as the psychologist Charles Tart called it. And what I realized in that moment was I wanted to figure out whatever way I could to try to help other people kind of come to terms with their reality. And how that started for me was me making posts on Facebook. A lot of them early on were super angry, right? I was really mad at what had happened to me. I don't think I mentioned this yet, but after I took MDMA, of course, I started trading it and selling it to people, mainly because I wanted them to wake up too. I was like, if this can happen to me. So I was like sort of a techno shaman. And it was this whole experience that turned me into an activist. So I was impassioned by that. I started writing posts online, and that actually turned into a job for me because I got invited to speak at a conference, because I never thought this could have happened. So it kind of goes to show how being impassioned and following your intuition can really help put you in the place where you want to be in life. I was arrested. I have a felony on my record, but I was able to overcome that by, luckily, crypto emerged, and also just making angry posts online ended up turning into a whole new job opportunity or job space for me. So you never know what your passions can actually unlock for you as a person, and hopefully you end up actually helping other people in the process. So I would say don't be afraid to just go out there and put yourself out there, put yourself on the line, even in doing what we do. Trying to achieve something in life for yourself and to help other people requires you to take a little risk sometimes.
Yeah.
So I would say don't be afraid to take some risk, put yourself out there, and chase that obsession, as Novel said.
Beautiful.
Oh.
Awesome. I appreciate your time.
Yeah,
Thanks so
man.
much. Keep it pushing.
Absolutely,
Look
brother.
forward to
Yeah.
chatting with you more, man.
Keep doing what you do too well, brother.
Awesome.
Appreciate you.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Cool.